Good evening, I'm Donna Hicken. A 38-year-old American Beach man is dead after a 10-hour standoff with Nassau County Sheriff's deputies. Chuck Smith is a disabled Vietnam veteran. He kept 20 officers at bay, firing at them frequently during the standoff. Roger Weeder reports on the tense moments leading up to the fatal shootout.
In these exclusive pictures, Nassau County deputies shortly after midnight charged the American Beach home of Chuck Smith, a disabled Vietnam vet, refused to surrender following an intense standoff and frequently fired his .38 caliber pistol at officers. Major Rocky Missler says everything possible, including tear gas, could not force Smith to give up peacefully.
A lot of shots were fired, but a lot of them were tear gas going in. It wasn't shots at him. The house was saturated with CS gas, and to be perfectly honest, I don't know how he stayed in the house.
For Nassau County deputies, it all started early Saturday afternoon following a report Smith was behaving erratically and was armed with a knife. When two deputies responded, they were threatened by Smith, who later took refuge in his home. In Smith's home, investigators still find the smell of tear gas overpowering. Chief Assistant State Attorney Brian Davis is trying to determine if officers acted properly in charging Smith's home.
Reasonable efforts were made to coax Mr. Smith home. Unfortunately, he armed himself and opened fire.
A friend of Chuck Smith believes officers may have used excessive force. Melvin Pelham says Smith was a disabled Vietnam vet, a man who possibly saw giving up as no option.
They had the house surrounded, spotlights, and it was could have went back to what we was taught in Vietnam. Do unto them before they do unto us.
Smith was hit several times and had a pistol at his side. His death ended a stalemate with deputies, family, and doctors, none of whom could convince Smith to surrender peacefully. In American Beach, Roger Weeder, the News on 12.
Now, Roger says the state attorney's office is conducting its own investigation of how Nassau County deputies handled the standoff. That office will decide if the police shooting of Smith was justifiable. A tense standoff in Nassau County left one man dead is the subject of an investigation tonight. That story tops our 24-hour news check. Dead is 38-year-old Chuck Smith. The Vietnam vet held 20 deputies at bay with gunfire until he was fatally shot. Roger Weeder has the story from American Beach.
Shortly after midnight, deputies charged the home of Chuck Smith to get him out. Smith, a disabled Vietnam veteran, had taken shots at deputies during an intense standoff. For Nassau County deputies, it all started early Saturday afternoon following a report Smith was behaving erratically and was armed with a knife. When two deputies responded, they were threatened by Smith, who later took refuge in his home. The decision to take Smith's home by force came when talking for nearly 10 hours went nowhere.
We never had a hostage. He just barricaded himself and armed himself. Talking to him made threats that he'd do what he had to do and that he wasn't coming out.
Investigators, including the state attorney's office, are working to see if the standoff could have ended without bloodshed.
Reasonable efforts were made to coax Mr. Smith from the home. Unfortunately, he armed himself and opened fire.
Melvin Pelham knew Chuck Smith. Both had served in Vietnam. Pelham says his friend probably saw surrendering as no option.
Well, with all the police around and everything, he could have been reliving the Vietnam conflict.
This conflict ended with Smith shot several times and dying with a cocked, loaded gun at his side. In American Beach, Roger Weeder, the News on 12.
Roger says the state attorney's office will have to rule if the fatal shooting by Nassau County deputies was justified.
This is the News on 12.
A triple murder shocks a Northside neighborhood in all of Jacksonville tonight, and police say this is the man responsible for the shooting, 21-year-old Cedric Brown. Good evening. Brown is in critical condition in a Jacksonville hospital tonight.
Two of his alleged victims are hospitalized as well. 3 others are dead, and police say the gunman had just been in jail for harassing those victims. More on that ahead, but right now, details on the murders. It happened here on the north side in the Centennial Townhouse Apartments on North Broad Street. Neighbors heard shots here late last night, and in the end, police say 3 people were dead. Sheriff Jim McMillan says the gruesome murders struck a chord with some of his officers. Even 20-year veterans on the force fought back tears at the bloody scene. Julie Cornell starts our team coverage tonight by taking us back to the neighborhood to violence.
It was gunfire in the darkness of this downtown apartment complex that brought police here. Jacksonville SWAT team disappeared into shadows, too late to stop a man on a rampage with a gun and a butcher knife. 21-year-old Cedric Brown would leave the scene in an ambulance. He shot himself in the head, but police say first, in a fit of anger, he stabbed and shot 4 others.
Oh my God.
Including this 14-year-old Janika Pierce, a friend of the family. Brown is charged in the murder of his 2-year-old daughter, Tamara. Police say Brown also fatally shot Tamara's mom, 19-year-old Michelle Spinner, and Michelle's mother, Patsy Williams. As night became day, neighbors tried to figure out what happened inside this apartment, matching the gunfire they heard with the screams of neighbors they hardly knew. Police tape seals the windows of the gruesome crime scene. Neighbors like Sandra Kaiser are cautious. It's a normal thing to hear gunfire?
Yeah, I always hear. I looked out the window because normally when they shoot like that, you don't know where the bullet's going.
Neighbor Laverne Hayes says Patsy Williams used to drive her to the grocery store. Last night she heard her screams.
I walked in the house and I heard a bunch of ladies screaming like, shooting everywhere. Right, so I went in the house and told my sister that they were shooting somebody's house. But
these folks say random gunfire here is a daily occurrence. This time, though, those shots hit closer to home. Julie Cornell, the News on 12.
Once again, murder suspect Cedric Brown is in critical condition in the hospital tonight. Brown's 2-month-old daughter was also in the apartment. She was not injured. And as we said, the suspect, Cedric Brown, was just released from jail.
Just 6 hours after police arrested Brown for allegedly harassing the victims, a judge released him from the Duval County Jail. The reason? Cedric Brown had no criminal record. Winston Dean continues our team with more on the man accused of the killings.
Our SWAT team members, who are some seasoned officers, you couldn't help but seeing some tears in some eyes.
It didn't take 21-year-old Cedric Brown long to pile up a criminal arrest record when before his alleged rampage last night, he had none to speak of. How it eluded him confounded a close friend of his ex-girlfriend, Michelle Spinner, one of 3 people he's accused of killing. That friend, who asked not to be identified, described him as extremely brutal toward Michelle. But somehow the Florida Community College student had no violent criminal history to show for it.
Who is this guy? That's kind of a question mark right now. I don't think we really know. I think we're positive on the identification, and seems to be no other kind of criminal record, or we're not familiar with any mental problems at this time. So what made it go bad? We have got information, I think, from someone, either the sister or the person, that he had brutalized the live-in wife or the girlfriend before meeting her. So he may have shown that kind of temperament in the past.
That violent streak showed itself as late as yesterday morning when police arrested Cedric Brown for allegedly throwing rocks at Michelle Spinner's bedroom window. But the judge in the case had no alternative but to let him out of jail, sentencing him to just time served. In this case, just 6 hours. And 12 hours after that, police say he went berserk, killing Spinner's mother, one of his own 2 daughters, and repeatedly stabbing 14-year-old Janika May Pierce in the back and neck using a large butcher knife.
The brutality of it is, while he was doing that, heard his own 2-year-old crying in the next room with the dead women, went back in and stabbed that child to death, completely pierced that young child's body.
One other thing is known about Cedric Brown. Despite shooting himself in the temple, he's expected to live. Winston Dean, the News on 12.
His first News on 12.
Inside this apartment is a scene of tragedy that has left a family shattered and both neighbors and police shaken. The big question tonight is why?
What caused the bloody scene that has shocked even police veterans who thought they had seen it all?
And as we hear now from Grant Winter, police say the man who committed the murders was no stranger.
Police say the man is 21-year-old Cedric Brown.
Oh my God.
Investigators tell us that he showed up at his former girlfriend's place on North Broad Street to get some belongings, and then, for some reason, he started shooting and stabbing his way through the apartment.
After a while, I heard some shots, and I heard them screaming. And after then, about 5 minutes later, I heard some more shots and some more screaming.
By the time it was over, police say that Brown had killed his former girlfriend, one of their two, and the girlfriend's mother. Police say that Brown also stabbed a 14-year-old family friend. She's at University Medical Center right now. She is expected to live. It's thought that most of this happened before the SWAT team ever arrived. But after they did get there, Cedric Brown shot himself in the head. Police say that Brown was still able to talk as he was rushed to University Medical Center early this morning. If he survives, he might be able to explain what happened inside this apartment earlier today, a crime that Sheriff Jim McMillan is calling one of the worst incidents of carnage in recent memory. Grant Winter, the News on 12.
We're told that Cedric Brown was arrested on Tuesday this week for harassing the same family that he is now accused of destroying. Our team coverage continues at 6 o'clock. We will talk with neighbors and we will look at Brown's history.